Now, our cost for digital assistants per year for that year one, including implementation cost, is 150 to 190, right? So you might think that's a little large here, but really the biggest thing here to think about is it's the one-time implementation fee, right?
Thinking about adding an AI assistant to your JD Edwards environment, wondering which digital assistant can actually save you time and money, like ChatGPT, CoPilot, Oracle's digital assistants, or ERP Suites' own Franklin. Today, we're giving you a full, honest review of Franklin and how it stacks up against the competition and whether it's the right fit for your team. So you're trying to cut through the AI hype and make the right ERP decision. This is the episode for you. Welcome to Not Your Grandpa's JD Edwards, where we take a no nonsense look at modern ERP tools and strategies. I'm Nate Bushfield, and today we're doing something a little different, a review episode. We're breaking down Franklin, ERP Suites AI digital assistant, as well as other digital assistants to answer the question, what is the best AI tool for JD users? We'll compare it to some of the most talked about assistants in the market and help you figure out if Franklin belongs in your ERP toolbox. But today, we're joined by Robb, AI advisor at ERP Suites. Drew, how are you doing today? And for those out there who haven't seen you on the podcast before, can you explain your role and give us a little background?
Absolutely. Thank you, Nate. So I am Robb. I am as he said, the AI advisor at ERP Suites. I've been with ERP Suites for like 8 years now. So as an internship, moved into the wonderful world of our products that we have, and then eventually into the data analytics and data consulting role, which leveraged me straight into or launched me into the AI advisor role. And really in that role, it's really exciting. It's really getting customers started on their AI journey. Really getting them started with implementing AI into their business, whether it be a quick win solution or an implementation roadmap. And just really seeing the value of AI, specifically in JD Edwards, and where we can start to apply some of our great solutions that we'll talk about here, but most specifically, as Nate said, Franklin, our digital assistant, which integrates directly into your JD Edwards environment. So looking forward to the conversation today, really educating you on the best fit for digital assistants out there, as well as other solutions that might fit into your business, and really getting you guys started with AI and along your AI journey in your business. So thank you, Nate, for having me. Been on about 3 times now, so looking forward for another good conversation with you.
Yep, you can now say that you're also a recurring podcast
Absolutely.
guest. Getting right into it. What's the difference between a chatbot and a digital assistant that's built for JDE?
You hear chatbot a lot out there in the world in the ecosystem, and for very good terms, it's a good tool, right? The best way to think about a chatbot is it's very automated and very rule based. You want to think of it as being very transactional. You ask the chatbot a question, it comes back with a response, and it potentially leads you on a journey to the next question or in a straight line. It's very transactional. To get to that next question, to get to your input, to actually get to the response you want. And it's very one dimensional in a sense that you can only do one specific thing, right? And it follows a path. And that's the biggest thing about chatbots now at ERP Suites. We try to not say chatbot at all. We want it to be digital assistant. Digital assistant to us is more dynamic. And what I mean by more dynamic is whether it's a certain skill, just such as moving workloads to different work centers, right? Think about that option. Or, the ability to, glean insights from your financial or manufacturing data, or even inventory data, such as demand forecasting. Not trying to get into use cases, we'll talk about it later, but it's the ability to jump around between different skills and how an end user operates with the digital assistant, right? And it allows you to do multiple different things within your role in the business. It doesn't allow you just to do one specific thing. Again, you can start to jump around and be more dynamic. The digital assistant, and really think of your entire job role and task inside of that. And that's the biggest thing. So one last thing I'll say about the digital assistant is you really got to think about it as, like a second year intern out of business, right? And the ability to answer those questions pretty easily, but also be more conversational. And that's a big thing we push as well. Less robotic, more conversational, um, with the interactions with the user. And it really feels like you're talking to, some sort of coworker as well.
Yeah. And obviously, I'm sure a lot of our listeners have been more exposed to a chatbot out there. And when you're looking at those, you're right. They give you like 5 prompts and you get to choose which one. With the digital assistant, obviously, very different. Yes, there are certain things that you can say to it and you know what you're going to get out. But there's also a whole realm of possibility of, oh, how can I manipulate this data to better suit my needs? So really, it's a chatbot that takes it way further than what a traditional chatbot could even start to think about. When companies are truly exploring AI assistants, what are the real options? Like, especially if they're running JD Edwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a ton out there that you really think about. A ton of other vendors like ERP Suites who are building out, digital assistants out there, even chatbots. They'll call them chatbots as well. Just know the limitations of the chatbots that we talked about in that first question. But out there, it's really just depends on what you want to do. Now, there's a lot of open source tools out there. You talk about ChatGPT, you talk about potentially Microsoft CoPilot as well. Google has its own digital assistant. Amazon has its own digital assistant as well. So it just really depends. But those open source ones, especially referring back to ChatGPT, for example, is you have access to all this data, you have access to all this information. You can ask it a lot of different questions, but there's a lot of things that come into play with that. One is you're not running directly against your JD Edwards data or even other third party data that you want to pull in, right? You want it to almost be a little siloed so that we know we're getting the correct results. One thing I've actually talked about in past podcasts, it's called AI risk and remedies, is really hallucinations in your data. And that's what really the open source, chat GBTs bring out is hallucinations, really incorrect results or not 100% correct results in your data. And that's really because it's so open source and it's open to those different information out there. So it's really important to make sure you're looking directly at your enterprise data. Now you can bring in other third party data sources as well. You can bring in website financial data, weather data if it's so meet your industry needs for whatever product you're building out, or some other Oracle SQL databases that might hold different data that's on inside JD Edwards, even CRM data as well. You can think about, but it's really just about having access to good quality data. Um, and really, that's the thing that happens too, even with enterprise tools. Like, so a lot of other vendors that we've seen out there is for example, they build out solutions, but they build it in like the digital assistants in house, right? So it's inside of their four walls, inside of their infrastructure. So the hoops you have to jump through to really make those connections to other data sources as well as your JD Edwards data, it becomes very difficult, right? And a lot of just really front end work that will come into play. And another thing with those third party data sources as well is, again, yeah, accessing it, security becomes a big issue. And we'll talk about that a little bit more and dive a little deeper into that. But the security of going inside of their infrastructure rather than having it inside of your four walls becomes a huge factor as well. Now, the big thing with Franklin, as we like to say, and I mentioned it before, is it's really integrated inside of our JD Edwards, right? It's integrated side by side along with your applications. But it's really just the ease of use as well, right? Having it next to your applications is the biggest thing.
And if you look at a ChatGPT, and I know that a lot of our users have probably utilized either that or a Copilot or something like that. It's funny you bring up the Amazon one because I had never heard of it, which is very
Yeah,
surprising. I feel like I'm,
Amazon Q, yeah. Good one. Yep.
yeah,
That one
had no idea. But yeah, with a lot of these open source, you're not entirely sure where they're getting their data from. But when you're looking at those like that are out there already for the JD integrations, they're getting their data directly from your JD data sheets
Yep.
and everything that you're looking at. So they're never going to make something up. So there's an amount of trust that really could come from
Right.
this. I'm not saying that open source isn't trustworthy. I mean, then again, ChatGPT's CEO literally said a few weeks ago saying that you shouldn't trust it, that he doesn't understand why people trust this new technology. And that carries a lot of weight. If a CEO is truly saying that about their own product, there's a lot of truth that comes with that.
I would even think of it the other way, like we're talking about, the data getting back from there's open source. You really also got to think about the data you're uploading to that open source, like sensitive, confidential company data. Just you really don't want to do that. And just knowing that you have a safe digital assistant to interact with inside of your four walls is really what we're promoting, right? And again, like minimizing the amount of integrations and the setup and how you access it. It's just right next to you using really JD Edwards security. So that's the nice part about Franklin.
Yeah, exactly. But what kind of tasks are teams actually using Franklin for today? And how does it show up in their day to day ERP work?
Absolutely. Now the one thing I want to find here with the task with Franklin is there's kind of two different ways you can use Franklin. And the first way is, the ability to automate routine tasks, streamlining workflows, right? So think of it that way. Really start with automation. Now, you might think that's like RPA, really starting to just do automation, but you can build off of that and build more things into the digital assistant. But it's really just starting to streamline workflows, eliminating clicks and JD Edwards. And that's what we're going to talk a lot about, our AI journey, our quick win solution with customers a little bit later here. But it's really getting that quick win into your business is what customers really look at as, the transactional workflows. I mentioned one before, whether that's moving, work orders to specific work centers when different work centers are at capacity, or, automating, financial reconciliation or the close of the month, right? Or maybe you want to automate, the inventory restock for your company, right? Or creating a bill of materials that gets sent out right now to a vendor. So there's just a lot of different, options you can take here, and it's really just automating, you know, how an end user uses JD Edwards, right? Minimizing the amount of applications that are going into it and the clicks it takes to get to that, to get to those various solutions or get to that various endpoint, right? Updating routing codes is really another one. And just really just really making the digital assistant, and really we're going to start thinking about all of the possible is how can it start to be cross-functional in your business as well. As manufacturing connects to accounting and connects to all finances. How can we make it more transactional? And that's really one way you could use Franklin is really the streamlining of tasks, right? Now, the second way you can use Franklin, and you can tie these together as well, right? They don't just have to be hand in hand. It's just a different way to think about it. Is you can use Franklin to really inquire against your JD Edwards data and the complexity of JD Edwards tables and applications, right? So starting to look at that data, starting to do some calculations is the big thing you'll start to do. So in the finance, well, we can think about this as calculating net sales by fiscal year, or breaking it down by quarter, or looking at your top 10 sales reps, and breaking it down just in that digital assistant pane and starting to show that information, because those calculations are really hard to get in JD Edwards, or they just don't exist at all, right? And another thing we're starting to really leverage the digital system do is starting to read documents as well. So whether you're reading material usage documents to gather information from that, or even HR documents when you start to onboard, certain customers or certain employees. Sorry, when you start to onboard employees, and you got to read through, you got to train them on certain things, whether just their line of business, their work, right? You got to train them on their work. That's another thing we're training, we're getting the digital assistant to start doing, starting to read various different documents. Another one working closely with the customers, really, training employees on certain MRP processes, right? And really the supply chain process in general. Just really start getting employees to start to understand that, right? And it's just very important. It's really around training is what it's really doing. Now, we can even take that a step further. So now you're reading documents, you're getting information from that. It's linking back to the sources of those documents. The step further is we're actually working with, and we've done this recently in our testing. We've taken a income statement from 2025, right, or 2024, sorry, and we projected out what is the income statement for 2025? So in the end, it's starting to actually build out documents as well. It's starting to do that forecasting, right? And we've already built that into the digital assistant as well, doing FP&A analysis, and then that's really located in our financial digital assistant. Just to summarize here, it's really two different ways of using it. It's using it to be more transactional and really helping your end users do tasks more quickly, as well as inquiring on your data, whether that be starting to make predictions or even building out some of these sheets. AI is just taking a big turn there, and really having that all within inside the digital assistant is very important as well. So
Yeah, exactly. And it also takes out that human error element.
correct.
And you'll see that with all of these different digital assistants that are out there in the space of, I mean, there are people out there that have heavy fingers that might type in one too many zeros or mess up something when they're actually creating one of these forecasting statements or looking at
Yep.
the income statement. But there's also the side of it of it's a great way to check if your data is truly clean.
Right. Yeah,
Because
that's a
if,
great one.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Didn't mention
if
it before, it's master data management. It can help you with master data management and starting to clean up your data, because what are you going to leverage if your data is not in a good shape, right? With these
exactly.
AI tools.
Exactly. And especially when you do, maybe you're looking for the end product of what is the forecast for this next year? What does that look like? If those numbers aren't adding up, if they don't really make sense from where your business was to where it's going, then you know something's wrong with your data. Then you know to
Exactly.
go look for it. Yes, we have alerts. We have different things that'll probably check that way before it happens, but it's a good end product where you can still check back on that data to make sure that it makes sense and that it is cleaned up for your future, which everybody needs clean data. But
Absolutely.
anyways, when you stack up these AI assistants, what's the real story around JD Edwards integration and understanding the native language of JDE?
The ability, and we mentioned it before, is really the ease of use, right? With the JD Edwards digital system, with Franklin, right? And it really comparing those to, those custom integrations out there, right? We build out Franklin based on your specific use case. And what I mean by that is we build it out on your specific end-to-end job you want to complete, or task you want to complete. We call them skills, right? And we build out that skill, that digital assistant skill, to assist you, whether you're inquiring on your data or you're building out those transactional workflows, to make work easy for you. It's all around that, right? And it's very dynamic in the sense that, if we'll get into cost a little bit later, but the cost really is around how much you actually use the digital assistant, not so much how much you build into it and what all it has access to, and opening up to the breadth of JD Edwards data that's out there, because that's not really, especially if you're just getting started with AI, that's not really the route you want to do, right? And a lot of other solutions out there, and I've talked about them being third party solutions, which again provides a lot of integrations. As I said before, the ease of use could be difficult because you're not logging directly into JD Edwards to use a digital assistant. Also, if you really want to think about it, they're almost trying to build you out packages and give you access again to all the JD Edwards data. But there also might be skills out there that you might not use in those packages, right? Just looking online for a few other ones, some are offering, supply chain packages, full end-to-end supply chain usage. And you might not have that, especially for one specific business user. They might not want that, right? They might just want to do 2 or 3 tasks, and that's their specific job. They're not going to want the open end supply chain. A lot of what I want to relate this to is, if you think about it, it's like JD Edwards licensing. You buy all these packages out there, for financial, for HR, for manufacturing, procurement, and you might not use all of them in your business. So you're basically wasting the money because you're not utilizing everything you want. Whereas with Franklin, you're building out specific skills and flows that relate to your specific needs. And that will definitely minimize the cost as well.
Yeah. And I mean, not to bring this up, but are there any negatives about Franklin and
Oh,
what it's limited to?
absolutely. And really the negative is going to be, the implementation effort and where you take it is, and then the implementation, right? It's a lot of, in ERP Suites, when we're working with AI, we want to be advisors in this space. So it's a lot of working specifically with your use case and what you want to accomplish, right? We're not just going to build it out. You're not going to have access to a bunch of tables right away. What do you actually want to see? So the implementation could take a little bit of time. Now, we've mentioned before with ERP Suites is really, quick win. How can we simplify this for you, right? So it's really around we try to get to you quickly, but it's going to be a lot of consulting back and forth for understanding your specific business needs, so we get you the right product and not we're not just giving you a packaged product like you see out there. Another thing, another downside, Franklin, really is we can bring in other third party data sources, and that's fine, right? A couple, two or three. Don't think of Franklin as like an end to end. We're connecting like 10 different systems. Like that's definitely a limitation, which I don't know when you're just getting into AI if you really want to do that and connect all different data sources, like two or three really solving a problem, right? That's where you want to start. So definitely think about that as well. We're not going to connect 10 different sources all coming into one digital system doing multiple tasks. Now, again, we can build off of that and build more skills and flows, as I mentioned before. But really starting from that ground zero, focusing on two or three data sources, but primarily your JD Edwards.
Yeah, and obviously, everyone's talking about a quick win in the AI space these days, and it is great that we know that you can start small,
Yep.
start very small, and then build up from there. And the possibilities are endless in terms of what you actually want to do. But how do these tools compare when it comes to like an ease of use and getting your team productive quickly?
Sure. So I mentioned that a little bit before. It's really easy use. So, as I said before, the third party systems, the way you access it might be a little bit different. We can even potentially go to security a little bit here, like the potential security implications with whatever AI tool a third party is using, versus not using JD Edwards security, which we leverage a lot, right? So we leverage the JD Edwards security, the role based security. So you really only have access to the skills you want to have access to, and the other ones are really hidden. And that's how, it one helps the end user use the product, and we can promote usability because they're not confused on the various different avenues they can take and the various different tasks they can do. It's focused primarily on their task, right? And what they can do. And again, it's still dynamic though, right? So you have the ability to work with different tasks that you want to complete, right? So they can do various different things. It's not necessarily, one dimensional as we mentioned before, chatbot. It's still dynamic in the sense, but again, you're using JD Edwards integrated digital assistant, right? You only have access to your certain skills. You only have access to the things you want to complete. Whereas out there in other third party tools, there might be a lot open to the end user. So again, the training's harder, promoting usability, the change management. Do they trust what they're doing? Do they even want to use the digital assistant as it gets more complex, right? Just keeping it simple at the beginning and starting to train them as I said, we're advisors in this whole process. So we'll help you along the way. But it's really around that ease of use there and how they integrate and how they interact with it, just making it easier for the end user. It could be a business analyst, it could be a manager, it could be a director, especially if you're starting to inquire on data, financial records, time the top end stuff. Just making it easier for any end user. We're not just talking about a business analyst. We're really talking about anyone that wants to utilize a digital assistant, Franklin.
Exactly. It needs to show value. So we're talking about quick wins, and you're talking about this stuff. Like it needs to show value, it needs to show it quick. And you're right. If you do have this giant package of what they can do, the list of do's and don'ts is going to be a mile long.
Exactly.
If you start simple, there's only like two don'ts, and then there's a bunch of do's, which, yes, they're still training with it. We're not going to lie. Like, yes, you still need to be trained up on what a digital system can do, but it's not going to be as extensive right off the bat. So your company might actually think that it's more beneficial because they don't have to go through endless amounts of training. I know that when we do
Yeah.
trainings together, some of them, oh man, they are too long. It bores me to death, but there is a lot of value in that. If it's shorter, people just seem to actually react to it better. I don't know. That might be
No,
personal.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's all around shortening the training, providing comfort and using the solution, right? And how can you make that easier for the end user in the end?
But what I know that you mentioned a little bit of security earlier, but what should teams expect around security or even cost and even
Sure.
implementation, especially if they're
Absolutely.
evaluating multiple platforms out there? What do they all
Yeah.
look like?
Yeah, so let's take the cost one first, for example. So with the cost, it's really around, that first skill that we're building out, or that flow, if you want to talk quick one, it's really all around the usage of the end user is what we want to think about. Now, our cost for digital assistants per year for that year one, including implementation cost, is 150 to 190, right? So you might think that's a little large here, but really the biggest thing here to think about is it's the one-time implementation fee, right? So the one-time implementation fee is 100,000, and after that, the year as you get yearly into it, it gets cheaper for one, and two, what we also include in that price as well is continuous support and innovation. Now we talked about and we mentioned before, it's really about having human in the loop. And that's when we go through the training and the usability with the end user because they know how their process works, or they know what data to an extent is in their JDO's environment and what they're seeing from historical data if you're trying to inquire using the digital assistant. So it's really around the ability to actually enhance your digital assistant for the future is what you're really paying for. Now we've seen, and actually, I haven't really seen much other companies out there having pricing for the digital assistant. You don't know what it could be. You've seen packages out there, right? The supply chain package or the financial package, or it connecting to all your different data sources, just inquiring on your data is another um, potential vendor one I've seen out there. It's kind of open ended, right? And I know that's going to provide a high consulting effort and engagement for deciding how much this is going to cost. It's going to create a lot of back and forth. It's going to take a while, and it's not really going to really provide that quick win that we've been talking about. Whereas, we're pretty confident with that range. That's between 150 and 190. Talking with other customers, our different implementations we have with customers, it's really around that price. Whereas the other ones are either not there or it's very open ended, right? So you don't really know how much it costs. Where you're going to know upfront, what ours is, and it does vary, right? We talked about the different skills used, the flows. It's really around usage, though. I didn't mention this before, and I was going to get into it. We're leveraging OCI digital assistants, so it's around their cost, which is definitely around usage and the amount of inputs you have. But again, it's a lower end cost, right? Than what you've seen out there, especially if you start to look at our third party solutions out there as well. And the implementation effort, like I said, you can start as big as you want. We can create, an implementation roadmap, but our goal is to really start with that one specific use case, right? That one specific skill. It may have multiple flows, but that one specific thing you want to accomplish, whether it be inquiring against your data or transactional, like I mentioned before. So just think of it as it does depend for us, but we do, we have a costing model out there, whereas others may not. And we have an implementation plan to go along with it, right? If we end up starting with 3 or 4 skills or 5 skills rather than one. But just know the effort's not, it's not huge, right? It's going to provide some consulting for the use case. But as far as costs, it's kind of covered right away for us.
Exactly. And when it comes to the implementation side too, there's a lot that could really go into that when you're talking about costs. And if you're
Correct.
looking at a third party system, application, digital system, whatever you truly want to call it,
Chatbot sometimes,
there,
yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
chatbots as well.
Yep.
There might be more time, more money that will go into it because they have to integrate it to the actual system of JD Edwards.
Correct.
And the native builds out there, like the Gen AIs, the Chat JDE, which I just learned about yesterday, by the way. I had never heard of it. I thought somebody just called Chat GPT the wrong name. But yeah, they have that built out to where it's an actual integration that's already been realized and been formatted. So there are other
Yeah.
solutions out there that have that native build just like Franklin does. So there is more of an ease, and maybe it's not as pricey as doing something that's more of an open source that's going directly into JD Edwards. When you're talking about native, you'll probably see a lower cost than a third party that's trying to plug into JD Edwards. But anyways, what kind of results are teams seeing when they bring a digital assistant into live JD Edwards environments?
Yeah, real quick, Nate, I just want to cover, I just realized I didn't cover any security or governance. So I just want to really quick talk about that. If that's okay.
That's
But
okay. There's a lot of different podcasts that we've gone over the security side. If you want to check them out, Sean Meads and Brian
oh, very
Connors,
good.
there in the past, we have talked deeply about the security side of AI and what you truly need in terms of the background and in terms of the actual governance. And even Trina Huntsman, we talked specifically about the governance and the compliance side of it. So please, if you want to deep dive into those, go check those out. I'll link them in the description below.
Yeah, Nate, that's an amazing point. They really talk in depth about the security side. Inside the digital assistant now, the digital assistant security might be a little bit different. And we can tie that into this next question, absolutely. So really telling the stories, right? How does this help? How does this really help your business? And working with customers, how do we really feel like we're really saving times? And it's really just around, reducing the amount of, especially inquiring on your data with the digital assistant, reducing the amount of reports that the business analyst may have to grab or put together, really export to Excel if you need be, or some other visualization tool. It's really just minimizing that. It's reducing the amount of potential, tickets coming in as well. If you want to build out a digital assistant to help with, ticketing, right? I mean, we talked to customers about that, being that end user, working around tickets and how to resolve them, and looking at historical tickets and how have been managed in the past, and potentially pulling them up. That's definitely another use case we talked about with customers as well. Um, it really, again, I mean, I mentioned it before. It's really reducing the transactional, end user experience inside JD Edwards, and the ability to minimize the amount of applications that a business user has to go into to complete just a very specific task. And really, it's about yeah, starting to really build reports, as I mentioned before. Starting to build those financial reports, or those inventory reports, or various different things that you can pull out of the digital assistant, and get more insights from, right? It's not just looking at your data, but it's starting to do some work for you. And that's really what we want to think about. And, we've hoped it with Oracle is, the ability to crawl, walk, run, start from scratch, start with automation, and then really start to get the digital assistant to provide recommendations for you, and eventually autonomous ERP. And that's what we're really looking towards, and not to pull points back from earlier, but that's really around that continuous innovation piece in our pricing. It is really talking about, where can we take it? Where are the next steps? Where can we go since we got this quick win? Now that's implemented into your system and implemented into your business, how can we provide more ROI in your business with more enhancements, more AI tools used, from what we initially, implement with that specific skill? So that's really the biggest thing. And just looking at just, parts of your business where we can apply that. Um, so yeah, I mean, it really just depends. The big thing with our digital assistant with Franklin, it's around, traceability too. That's the one thing you got to think about is if we're trying to promote usability for the digital assistant, we have traceability, we have logs, we understand what users inputted what they're trying to get out of it, what mistakes they may have made. Maybe they spelled something wrong or inputted something wrong. It helps us the ability to train the digital assistant to do better on that as well. And another big thing is around reinforcement learning. So in our digital assistant, just plugging one other feature, you have the ability to the end user to train it themselves. So they can either hit the thumbs up or the thumbs down if they like an input or output, and then it allows us to start train them to train on their own against their JD Edwards data. It allows the digital system to become smarter along the way, rather than us having to do as much back end work training the models, retraining on new data, which is still very important when building out the digital assistant. But yeah, just remember, it's all using OCI services directly connected with JD Edwards security, and that end-to-end encryption there as well. And as well as it's native in JD Edwards, as we mentioned before.
Exactly. And it's learning from itself. And we're talking about all of these, they learn from themselves, which is one of the best sides of it. So if the solution isn't great in the beginning, you're not getting exactly what you want from every prompt that you throw out there, it is easy to train it to make it so if you do say a specific prompt every single time, like maybe you have a weekly task out there that you have to complete, and a lot of the times it's very boring and takes forever for no reason. Digital assistant can cut through that. But if you don't end up liking what the result is, it's great that there's a training model to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, yeah, like if I had to do a task every single week like that, and I could train a digital assistant to give me the exact output that my higher ups are looking for, that will cut through all of that BS work and allow me to utilize my time on more important things. The productivity side that we've talked about so much
Absolutely.
when across the podcast, sure, but also in this episode, there's so much that you can be doing instead of doing these random manual tasks that are out there. And yes, that could also go with orchestration that's out there instead of going with a digital assistant. But there is a lot of valuable time that doesn't need to be spent on certain things like this. But can a digital assistant, like one of the ones that we've discussed, pair with other tools? What does that look like?
Absolutely, yeah, and I don't wanna, say too much about other solutions, those are on others' podcasts, but, really having the digital assistant pair with some of our other solutions. So we have a smarter analytics tool that will really start to look at your JD Edwards data, and again, we can do the sort of prediction and forecasting inside of there, inside the digital assistant. But this really takes it a step further. It starts to build out boilerplate dashboards of your data, different recommendations, detecting anomalies, providing key insights and recommendations. Attaching that to a digital assistant and having the digital assistant basically start to create some of those dashboards is really the art of the possible and how we're looking to integrate those two solutions together, right? So you had the easeability of answering questions with the digital assistant, providing recommendations, some forecasts, but maybe we can start to build out some dashboards for it, What is the forecast for the next year for the fiscal year 15, 16, 17, 18? Make it into a pie chart. It appears next to you in JD Edwards, right? It's just another pane inside of there, and then you have your application as well in there. So really utilizing that piece, and starting to provide some implementation plans, key recommendations that we have with Smart Analytics, and connecting that to the digital assistant and making it more dynamic, right? As we've mentioned a lot of times before, it's already dynamic, but giving it more access to more features, building out dashboards, providing key recommendations, key insights, detecting anomalies, even erasing anomalies that are out there in your JD Edwards data to improve master data management, as you mentioned before, Nate. Um, is very
Yeah.
swinging or do it.
No, and yeah, and when you're talking about the open source side of it, for some of these tools that are out there, yeah, maybe there is a way that you can actually connect
Oh,
these,
yeah.
but then you have that issue of where is that data going? So you might not want to give an open source full range of all of
Right.
your data that's out there because you don't know where it's going. You don't know the security side of it. So there is that issue of, yeah, maybe it can connect. Maybe there is a very like specific way that's very easy to connect to different tools, but then you have to limit those tools on what data it can truly see. So it's not going to be fully integrated into your entire system, especially if you are using sensitive data for whatever reason. So
Absolutely.
there is that side of it as well. Like, is there anything that maybe Franklin shouldn't be connected to, like in terms of specific data or specific tools? Like, is there a side of that that is scary? Or so, yeah, like
Yeah,
that.
I wouldn't say I don't know about scary. It's just really how do you define your security infrastructure when you start connecting to these third party sources, right? JD Edwards is all fine and good because we're integrated directly with it. But when you start going out there to the web to connect some websites, I've mentioned some weather data, some financial data, industry trends, all that kind of stuff. How do we create that security and where do we bring it in? And that's why I feel like a lot of the times, we obviously don't want to make JD Edwards more complex, but really either connecting via REST API that's secure or even bringing it into autonomous data warehouse securely inside of OCI, which has end to end encryption with all of its services, right? So bring it in more in house, right? Into the cloud environment. And we understand that security already. Like we said before, we integrate directly with OCI and JD Edwards. So understanding that. And when you start to connect to those sources out there, just being cognizant of doing direct connections, really, and direct integrations. And I know you want to do live connections, and we can run jobs to make it live if we need to. But really just understanding where is that data held and presenting those options. Are we doing a direct connection via REST API, or are we going to bring it into a data lake or data an autonomous data warehouse to build a data lake with your various sources that we can connect the digital assistant to, right?
Yeah, of course. So to go a little bit deeper in terms of what does an AI digital assistant truly look like for a business that's maybe thinking about getting one? What type of JD Edwards customers are a great fit for any one of these AI digital assistants? And what signals tell you that they're ready for it?
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing, one, especially if we're looking at Franklin, is definitely, mid to large market JD Edwards shops. Definitely want to look at those that are using JD Edwards, for everything. Or not for everything, for most things, right? And a lot of JD Edwards use it for manufacturing and finance. That's the biggest thing because you can start to tie all those processes together. And really just companies that are at a good point. We are consultants. We have a security team, but are really strong with their security infrastructure right now. Because what we really talk about is security. And again, Nate mentioned other podcasts out there earlier, but it's really around the fact that we can pretty easily integrate with your security infrastructure with a digital assistant and what we currently have. But having strong security around your digital assistant, as well as, we can do some data workshop or data cleanup and prep and standardization beforehand, before building out the digital assistant. Um, we can do some prep work, but if you're ready to start and get going with AI right now, really strong data, master data management. But again, we can use a digital assistant to fix that as well. So don't think that that rules you out. That could be a part of a digital assistant skill or solution we build out for you. But really just automating, as we mentioned before, a quick win solution, really defining a use case with a discovery call, understanding it fully, the end-to-end process, as well as the data and security. Having that quick win, that one specific skill we've harped on a lot during this. Companies with that in mind and with use cases already developed is very important as well. And again, we can work as consultants to help you vet use cases. Is it AI or is it even not AI? Is very important as well as, do you have a budget? That's the biggest thing. Do you have a budget for AI? Are you actually looking to implement and get ROI from AI? And do you have an initiative? Do you have buyback and do you have buyback? Do you have buy-in from your higher ups and your executives who can actually pan out? All these business analysts might have ways of how they can use a digital assistant to help their job or improve their job, but it's really all about the higher ups having buy-in, and then they're ready to start their AI journey in the end. So that's probably the biggest thing with customers is look for those points. Look where you're at. And again, you can start from square one. You might not know anything about AI, and that's where we come into play, being advisors. But if you want to really get started quickly, those are the sort of things that we want you to be at a good spot in, really.
Exactly. If you have that AI initiative, if you have those higher ups that are like, oh, we need to get into
Project
the
plan,
world
yeah.
of AI,
Yep.
there are quick wins out there. Doesn't have to be Franklin, doesn't have to be any one of these, but there are many solutions out there that can give you a quick win, that can give you that first step in an AI initiative that might unlock certain questions
Absolutely.
that you may have about it. Or maybe there's certain workflows, there are certain processes that are in your business that maybe you haven't thought about. Oh, what would a digital assistant look like in this space?
Absolutely.
But, anyways, we've talked a lot about great matches and what that would truly look like. But what companies maybe shouldn't be looking at a digital assistant right now?
Yeah, so really it's I kind of mentioned before, it's companies looking to connect a digital assistant across multiple platforms. Like for one, the complexity of that is insane. Right? And you're looking at a lot of different data sources with a lot of different systems, or you're trying to move a lot of data in various different areas, or you're trying to inquire and you might be combining five different data sources to get one specific input. And really what comes down to that when you talk about the complexity of connecting across multiple platforms is really around latency with your digital assistant. Our digital assistant, I can speak for that, comes back with responses in 5 or 10 seconds. The latency of connecting to multiple different sources and trying to get answers back, it could be minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, right? I mean, it really just depends on how complex it is. And to be completely honest, we are JD Edwards for a shop. If more dynamics, connecting to SAP or other, big, IBM or different other big brands out there. It's just like we want to be JD Edwards centric with also be having the ability to bring in other data sources to enhance your JD Edwards data and enhance your outputs you're getting and getting real insights from that. So I would definitely harp on the fact that, yeah, just still JD Edwards, mid to large size companies. I don't mean to bring that back in, but that's really what we're looking for. And really, this is the biggest thing. So just to be completely transparent, um, we're using OCI services, and recently Oracle released 9.2.8.2 that gives you authentication to those various different OCI services, whether that be the digital assistant or document understanding or smarter analytics is using Oracle machine learning. Just want to be transparent that when you upgrade, you get access to these really cool tools. And you've heard about enterprise automation, probably. I'm sure we talked about it in other podcasts as well. Nate are going to talk about it. But really getting access to all these new tools, including AI, you have to be on the newer tools release. And we leverage a lot of orchestration as well. So if you're not on a high enough tools release, um, and I might butcher this, but orchestration, I believe, is 9.2.4 above. So if you're not on, if you're on Orchestrator, leveraging how you get data in and out of the digital assistant, or how you inquire on the data, or even displaying it, or building out things, you know, it's definitely important to have that now in full transparency as well. We've found workarounds with some of our solutions, right? And really, it just comes down to you using more services because you don't have the authentication piece or orchestrator, so the cost then raises. So you just got to think of it that way. It's one, more complex to build out if you're on a older tools release, and two, the cost is going to be more high. You can still utilize, and we found workarounds. Again, we are advisors in this, so we try to find a quick win or a solution that fits for you. So don't let that scare you with the newer release. Just know the ease of accessibility and usage and all that kind of stuff, and lower cost and complexity is very important as well. So
Exactly.
definitely look for customers on higher tools release, but doesn't shy away from the ones on the older tools release as well.
Exactly. And if you're not trying to upgrade right now, if it's not on the cards for your
Yeah.
business, then maybe this isn't for you. And maybe there are other options out there that'll utilize what your release is on. But when it comes to orchestration side of things, that's going to be the base for a lot of these digital assistants that are out there.
Yeah.
So to be able to do that, you have to be on a release that has orchestrations, at least to a certain extent. Doesn't have to be insane. It's not, oh, you like this little tiny thing that we're doing? Yeah, you have to upgrade and spend a bunch of money just to get it. It's about being current with everything that is going on right now, especially with all of these great tools that are being released on JD Edwards. Upgrading and getting a digital assistant, that's just one side of the coin. There are so many opportunities in terms of the different tools that have been released that have nothing to do with the digital assistant.
No.
So if we're just talking about upgrades, yes, make sure that it's right for your business. Make sure that those automation side of things, the orchestrations, the different tools that are available, there might be more than just one out there that would help your business tremendously. And it has nothing to do with a digital assistant. So there are a lot of benefits for a
Yeah.
upgrade, no
Correct.
matter what you're on.
Absolutely, and it's really, yeah, and Nate hooked on it perfectly. It's a ton of different benefits. It doesn't just signify to just this digital system today. There's other AI tools and enterprise automation tools that we talk about in JD Edwards releases, and it's really about being the cutting edge. Are you on the forefront? Are you lagging behind? Is your business behind? Are you making your business functions harder just because you're doing the old way of doing things, right? Let's get on the new. Let's start being getting the competitive advantage. Let's start going above and beyond your competitors. Let's be dynamic, right? And again, just always think are the possible, and that's the biggest thing. So, not saying, again, as I said before, don't want to harp on it, but we are working with customers on 9.0. It's just the way around it is just it's just the ease of use and everything I mentioned before when you're on a newer release is important.
Yeah, of course. So to tie it all together, if someone's on the fence, maybe they're considering Genius AI or even ChatGPT or considering building their own digital assistant based on an LLM, what should they consider when evaluating Franklin?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really, and again, I think my number one point here is obviously ease of use and the ability to have it dynamically interact with your JD Edwards applications, because we all want to customize the way, we'll provide more customizations inside your JD Edwards experience. We want to enhance it along with the applications. And that's the biggest thing with Franklin, as well as we want to build out solutions that are right for you. that are right for you, the specific skills you want to integrate, providing ROI. We want to build them quick, right? We want to have, more control really as well over, the setup and maintenance is of the solution. So we give you the correct solution that gives you the correct results, or provides the specific task you want to solve. And that's the biggest thing with when looking at ours is the seamlessness of it, how we interact, the ability to have very only certain roles for certain users we mentioned before. Whereas the other ones out there, again, we mentioned, you might be building a package, you might have to do some other third party integrations, and you might have a different way of accessing it for your users, and not just having like a JD Edwards account that they already have. The accessibility is just different as well. So really looking at that and providing what you really want. Again, like one thing I also want to mention about Franklin that I failed to mention before, and I apologize for it, is we do have it natively inside the JD Edwards application, but it can live in different spots, right? It can live on internal sites, SharePoint sites, customer sites if you want to go that route for your customers to start using it. It really depends, but again, it's still using JD Edwards security with OCI security. But there is different ways to have. It doesn't have to just live in there, but it also doesn't have to live in other third-party infrastructure as well. You really choose where it lives and how you access it and how the business user accesses it. So that's probably the biggest thing, but it all comes back to promoting ROI and the speed of integration. And I think that's really important when looking at, a digital assistant and how you wanna go about evaluating them.
Exactly. And doesn't always just come down to Franklin in that way of,
No.
and I think we're on the same page about this. A JDE native AI assistant, AI digital assistant is probably going to be the easiest way to get a quick win. And
Correct.
is
No,
also probably going to be a less expensive option.
absolutely.
And in terms of use, in terms of trust, in terms of everything that we have laid out in this episode, there's something that goes with a native integration. Doesn't have to be Franklin. There are others that are out there. ChatGPT, Genius AI, like we just mentioned. There are others that are out there
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
seriously take a look at these solutions and make sure that they line up with what you want to do. But if you're comparing AI assistants and you want one that speaks JDE natively, Franklin should definitely be on your short list. Visit erpsuites.com to explore a demo or see how it compares directly in your environment. But thanks for tuning in to this review edition of Not Your Grandpa's J.D. Edwards. Whether you go with Franklin, ChatGPT, Genius AI, or anything else, make sure your AI assistant is actually making you more efficient, not more overwhelmed. Subscribe, share, like, and please join us next time as we continue cutting through the noise in enterprise tech. But until next time, listen, learn, and automate. Thank you.
Thank you.